as you know, we've been bringing in some very special guests to chat with us recently. And the only reason we've been able to do that is because you've been sharing this show. The number one way you can support the broadcast, because we're not asking you to take your credit card out. We're not asking you for any kind of money. All we're asking is if you get value from these conversations, only if you hear something that helps you to live a better life, then share this show by clicking that share button and giving it to somebody else who could use this information, or take the link and share it with somebody who you know needs to hear about what we're talking about. That's the number one way that you can help. Because today we're going to talk with an elite athlete. We're going to talk with a guy who is running ultra marathons while running a business, while supporting his family. He has quite the story. And today we're going to be diving in and really digging deep on habits and how habits can lead you to an extraordinary life. And today we're going to be talking to RJ Singh. RJ is from Australia. It's 11 p.m. there right now. So RJ, thank you for being here, man. And for those who are new to RJ Singh, he is a corporate and endurance athlete, a self-mastery mentor, and a devoted family man. With the right support of mentors, study, and practice, RJ has been able to achieve self-discipline, self-awareness, and find purpose through self-imposed adversity, which he calls crucibles, which we're going to dig into. He firmly believes that the strength and discipline of your habits will determine the magnitude of your impact. He is on a mission to lead by example and to empower individuals to maximize success across all areas of their lives through the power of habits. RJ's philosophy is that the path to personal transformation and real freedom can be found in your daily habits. This is why he's developed a framework in order to help enable people to become the best versions of themselves. RJ, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here, my friend. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brandon. What an introduction. I, as you know, am an American, but been living in Australia for so long, and I miss that American enthusiasm that you've got a natural voice for broadcasting. It's unbelievable.
Wow.
Great introduction.
Well, I appreciate those kind words, brother. I appreciate you being here. I know you're a busy guy. You got a lot going on with a business and a family and everything else you're doing. I mean, some people say they can't fit in time for the gym, but you're running ultra marathons while having a family, while having a business. I plan to dive right into that with you. But, you know, we haven't really talked about habits on this show. We've talked lightly about rituals. And back in my early 20s, I'm 27 now, but in my early 20s, I had to really adopt a lot of new habits to go from where I was to where I wanted to be. I was depressed. I was overweight. And I read a book called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And he talked about the premise of keystone habits and how just adopting one powerful habit into your life, it can impact practically every area of your life. So I want to jump right into this with you. You mentioned in the introduction that your habits determine the magnitude of your impact. So what exactly do you mean by that?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So life and the sum of life and the impact that we achieve comes down to the moment-to-moment interface we have with life, right? And within those moments, we have certain attitudes, behaviors, a way of being, okay? And we have access to the right decisions or the poor decisions. And with all that then comes habits, right? So each micro decision we make impacts an outcome. That outcome then compounds on itself. And then you have the ability to either create success or go the other direction, right? So habits is something that if you look at the whole personal development movement and the positive movement, habits has been something that has always been there. It's been consistent. And the reason that it's been consistent is it has impact. A lot of people don't want to talk about habits because it's not sexy, right? It's mundane, it's monotonous, and it's about doing the same things all the time. Obviously being fluid and open and flexible, but being able to do the same activities day in, day out that then compound on each other. James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits. He articulates it very well. has a compounding effect and ultimately unleashes your best self.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head when you said that habits aren't really a sexy thing to talk about, right? I mean, even The Power of Habit, it was a pretty dry book to get through. It had some great information, but a lot of people see, I feel, the success of many people, and they might even see like all the posts you do of the marathons that you run and the successes you have in your business, and they say, "Wow, that looks really cool. It's really cool how that just happened to RJ." But they didn't really see the work that went in behind the scenes, the habits and the rituals that you've procured in your daily, just what you do. And they see the end result, but they don't see what it took to get there. And I love that you said that, because they're not sexy, right? And you talk about ultra habits. So what exactly is an ultra habit versus just a normal habit?
Yeah, look, to me, there are habits that are obviously more impactful. I think all habits are important. I think in the main that there's no single trigger that says, hey, this is an ultra habit. It's more about putting together the right set of habits, create an ultra effect, right? And obviously, as an ultra endurance athlete, that word ultra has a special meaning. It means that we are, through that course of an ultra endurance event, we are pushing ourselves towards higher heights. And that's why we really wanted to go with the word ultra habits. But really what I'd say, for the sake of your audience, again, we need to be careful not to associate any magical qualities or any kind of superhuman qualities with the granular habits. They're basic and it's simplistic. And what's beautiful about habits is that it's accessible to all of us. It doesn't matter race, creed, sexuality, your financial position, what you have or what you don't. The reason I love habits is it is agnostic. It is available to all of us.
If they're available to all of us, then why is it that you think most people, they kind of have a fly by night nature when it comes to what they do throughout their day? Every day is different. And while it's different, it's that they don't have a routine. Like, I ask a lot of people, a lot of my clients, even at the very beginning of our coaching together and our time together, because after the first or second session, they have rituals, they have habits, or they start to develop them, I should say. Why do you think that most people, while they've heard habits and rituals and understand the importance, why is it that they don't necessarily adopt them or use them?
Well, because most people are habituated in the wrong way to negative habits, or they have no structure in their life, right? So it takes structure, it takes intentionality to develop habits, right? Most people serve some habit. They just serve the wrong ones. We all have a master, right? We all have a master, but that master may be Netflix. That master may be, crap food. It may be cigarettes. It may be alcohol. We're all serving some habit. It's just that we haven't created the right habits and the structure, and we haven't built those habits into our sense of identity, right? Because there's a correlation between identity and habits. What starts to happen is we do the gym, we do an exercise, but then being a fit person becomes who we are. So we're no longer doing something. It becomes ingrained in our DNA, right? But it's the habits that are getting us there. It's the habits that actually drive that integration of that act into our identity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I love how you said that at the beginning. It's something that's not us, but then it becomes part of who we are. Like, we're overweight, and then we set the intention of, well, I want to release a certain amount of weight from my body. We start going to the gym. We go through the difficult times, which I definitely intend to ask you about, like what happens when it gets difficult, because it will. And then it just becomes something that we do, right?
That's right.
We go to the gym. We are fit. Really awesome, very interesting. And my question to you, before we talk about like the process of creating a habit, sustaining that habit, strengthening it, what What do you believe, because not all habits are created equal, right? We just talked about that.
Yeah.
What do you believe are some of the most, or let's just talk about one. What do you believe is the most powerful and impactful habit that any of us who want to live a better life can adopt, at least from what you've seen in your experience?
For me, it's winning the day early, right? I think that if you can create a system whereas you are up in the morning at a time before the world is yelling at you, and you can face the day before the day faces you, if that makes sense, you're already winning. And that's something that's exhibited in the military, right? Like if you want to look at the best habits, if you want to look at any innovation really within the human capacity, you just have to look to the military, right? And there's a reason that these basic habits are ingrained. Wake up, make your bed, make it properly. You do things very early and you win the day. So I would say rising early and facing your day before your day faces you is a really great place to start.
We could talk about that forever. So I do want to, because I know a lot of people know that they should be waking up earlier, right? I work with a lot of salespeople. That's what I do full time, is I train salespeople and I help them earn more money and live a better life. And I found that a lot of salespeople, they'll have a shift that starts at like 9 a.m. and they're waking up at like 7:30, immediately just getting ready for their shift and heading to work. And they get there without having done any self-work. They get there without even really having any time for themselves to breathe or do anything. And it just sets them back for the entire day. Do you think there's a sweet spot that you found waking up at this time? I've watched a couple interviews with you, so I have an idea of what you're going to say, but I'm curious as to what that sweet spot is for you, as well as do you recommend it for everybody? And let's start there. Is there a right time to wake up, or does it depend on the person?
I want to talk about what you just said, and then I'm going to answer that question.
Okay.
My view is, especially with salespeople, that salespeople need to look at themselves as athletes. Sales is a role that is highly measurable. It is the most measurable role in an organization. And it is a role where you need to have a very strong inner game, right? And it is super important. I mean, you've got it at it, in its extremes. You've got the Jordan Belfort era, everyone was coked out and like just crazy and selling stuff and whatever, but they weren't looking after themselves. And then you've got the corporate athlete. And I'm of the view that people, irrespective of where they're at, but especially in sales, they need to be much more prepared in terms of how they interface the day. I'll go to the second question around waking up and what time. So for me, waking up depends on when I go to sleep, because sleep is the priority to waking up and early and exercising. So I'm a very, I get confused easily. So I need to make things very simple. For instance, tonight we're having this interview. It's 11 o'clock. This is way beyond my bedtime. Usually I may be up on a Friday. I do a long run on a Friday morning. I might be up around 4:30 or 4 or 5 a.m. depending on when I go to sleep and how uninterrupted that sleep is, because I've got a baby. I've got a 1-year-old.
Congratulations.
Right? Thank you. But given that you and I are going to have this conversation, I'm going to have to shift my strategy tomorrow, because sleep and having that 7 to 8 hours sleep is a priority versus waking up early. So what that might mean is we will finish this interview. It'll take me 20 minutes to get home. I'll sleep. And then based on that, I'll have to calculate those 7 hours, and I may wake up at 6:30 or whatever, right? And that means that I need to augment the way, maybe I have to run shorter, or, meditation shorter, or journaling shorter, or whatever. So the sleep or wake up time is never consistent. It's predicated on how much sleep I get, which I know is not always recommended. Some people say wake up the same time every morning.
Yeah. I'm really happy you said that, because I really resonate with what you just said, because like we've all read The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. Excellent book. We've read The 5 a.m. Club by Robin
Yeah.
Sharma. Excellent book. And they have excellent points and they're very well written. And I respect the individuals. The one thing that they never really talk about much, maybe for like 20 words out of a 40,000 word book, is sleep. And they say, hey, listen, these are really important principles. You still got to get sleep. But they don't talk about what you just said. Like, yeah, you might wake up at 4 a.m. one day, but you're not going to wake up at 4 a.m. if you went to bed at 11 p.m. Some people said, well, I'm a night owl. So what if I get most of my work done and my productivity like you're doing right now at 11 p.m.? Thank you again, by the way.
No,
Like, what if they're going to bed late and they're thinking, I got to get up at 4, I got to get up at 4. And that's just in their mind. They go to bed with that thought of, I got to get up early, I'm not going to get any sleep. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So it's refreshing to hear somebody actually say, you should still get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. So if you go to bed at 11, wake up at 8 or 7 or whatever it might be. So that's awesome. Now, what a lot of people have struggled with, especially me, because you mentioned this is like one of the most important ultra habits. So I definitely want to stay on this for a second. Okay, great. So now we're getting up earlier. We're winning our day, and earlier as in we're getting up so we at least have a few hours to ourselves before the day begins. What does your day generally look like personally when you wake up that gets you ready for the rest of your day? Like, what do you do for yourself in those hours that you wake up before the world?
Yeah, look, it's changed. I mean, there used to be a sitting, a meditation, and when we had babies, that all changed, because I could be meditating at 6 or 6:30. The babies have radars; they're up screaming and shouting. It's all out the window, right? So what I typically do now is the night before, I prep everything. My car's prepped. All the clothes are in my car, keys are in my shoes. There's very little movement required in the house. I'm just efficiently waking up and moving straight out of the house. Okay. And let's say that's at 4:30 or whatever. Depending on the training that I'm doing that day, I may do a run. I may go into the gym, work out with a PT, or I might have a podcast or whatever that I need to do. So generally, if I come into the office, I'll come in, I'll journal. I journal. I do some work out of Ryan Halliday's Stoic Journal. I like this. I like the journal. I'm not a Stoic, but I appreciate the material. I sit, do some contemplation, and then I get cracking into work. If I go to the gym or I run, that's different, right? If I go to the gym, I go straight to the gym, do my thing. I'll still get to the office 7:30, 8 a.m., right? And typically what I'll do is I'll start working. So I will start all my follow-up emails or everything that I needed to do in terms of follow-up. I will do that very early. And what I'll do is I'll push work back onto other people. So that means by 9:30 a.m., I'm completely open to be customer facing. So that means that those 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., I'm not doing admin while I'm trying to develop business, right? So I get that admin out of the way super early. People are getting back to me on stuff that I'm asking them for, but I don't really owe anyone from the day before, if that makes sense. It's completely customer outbound focus, whether it's dealing with prospects, presentations, blah, blah, blah.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's super important, especially for the entrepreneurs, business people, and even those who are leaders in companies, that you get that admin stuff done really before anything else. And you get it done with that extra time that you have for yourself because you prepped the night before. Because I love what you said about salespeople are athletes, and the best salespeople are the best and most elite athletes. And that is so accurate. I don't really see the top salespeople being these overweight individuals with no habits and no structure and no regiments. And when it comes to what you said about getting the admin stuff out of the way first, that frees you up to be customer facing, to speak with your clients, to do whatever you're doing with the business, with presentations. And that's really what moves the needle. right? So you're getting the admin stuff done, and then you're moving right into the money-making activities. You're getting right into the things that grow you and grow your business. And a lot of people feel that they're being productive, but they're not focusing on what actually moves the needle, like what you
Well,
just
you know why? Because in sales, and you know this, Brandon, in sales, one of the biggest viruses that can infect a salesperson is self-deception. See, salespeople are optimists by nature, but a good salesperson has the ability to be optimistic outward, but internally be ruthlessly honest as to where they're at. You see, but most people don't, because most people want to look at their activity, their pipeline it's all real. People used to say to me, and they still say it to me now, and you know, when you're a salesperson, everyone's always got something to say, even when you're doing well, because it's a highly measurable role. One of the things people used to always say to me is that my pipeline was smaller. It wasn't that my pipeline was smaller, it was just real. Everything in it is real. And I'm focusing on a targeted approach. And again, it's salespeople, we need to be careful, and we need to look out for that self-deception, because it's rampant.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I like how you put that sales twist to it, and that's great. Thanks for going there. My question to you is, you have a lot of experience, obviously, with sales, with business, with athletics, all these different things in your life that's led you to this point. So what's led you down this road when it comes to habits? What brought you into this field? Just what's a little bit of your story there?
Yeah, so I grew up in California in the Bay Area. I was born in Australia. We immigrated to the US, and I was a very good athlete in California. Grew up there, was in the Olympic development program in soccer. But what happened was I got into trouble really early, and I kind of had no strong sense of self. I was all things to all people. I was looking, you know, for friends, and I was just like a leaf in the wind. And I got caught up in the juvenile detention system. That took me to the adult prisons and jails. And ultimately, by the age of 25, it was 2008, I'm a multiple convicted felon. I've made money the wrong way my whole life. And the United States government is like, we don't want you here anymore. You weren't born here. And I had moved to the US when I was 3. But this is after 9/11. This is after things started to get really tight. And so my green card comes up for review. I've got I've got 2 felons. I'm still living the wrong way. You know, I got a girlfriend who's crazy. You know, we have altercations every other day. I'm living in Vallejo in the hood, and it's just it wasn't good times. And what happened was I started to feel the noose tightening around my neck, and I knew I couldn't get out of that way of life. Now, I was educated, like I was doing a business degree while all this was going on, right? Like I was at a good business school in San Francisco, and look, long story short, I got into some stuff and I just left the country. And when I left the country in 2008, the moment I boarded that plane, I couldn't come back, because my green card expired a month later. And that was it. And for 2 more years, I fell apart in Australia. You know, I thought I could come here and start over, but the alcohol was killing me. And I always say that had I had met an ultra marathoner or an artist or whatever, I might be a professional ultra marathoner or an artist, but the person that I happened to meet here in Australia that took me under his wing was a businessman. And I told him everything. And I was very lucky in the sense that he was a teacher. He loved to impart, and he also loved tough cases. And that was the beginning of my transformation. So 2 things happened there. I started to get purpose through business and sales. I channeled all that energy, all that pain, all that anger, everything into being successful at work. And I got sober. Those
Wow.
two things at the same time, anchored by running. That was it. It was extraordinary. Like people, I was crazy. I was in the office, cold calling, yelling on the phone. Like it was like boiler room. And the Aussies are looking at me like, what is going on? This guy's crazy. But I had to succeed. Right. And that was it. That was over 10 years ago, man.
Oh, super powerful story. So much has changed in the last 10 years for you, brother. Congrats on the progress you've made. Like, what a 180. Like, I bet you if you went to the 25-year-old self and you told them everything that you're going to achieve with your family and everything else, would your 25-year-old self have believed that you would accomplish what you've accomplished at this point that you're at now?
Well, let me tell you, what was a miracle was the U.S. let me back in.
Mm.
And this is during, during the Trump era. There's a lot of political, challenges, and they just believed that I'd become a different person. And after 9 years, they let me visit, and that was crazy. To go back home and to come face to face with the people I grew up with and the environment. I would walk around in my neighborhood and in the environment, and it was like a dream. It felt like so much time had passed, but it was yesterday, if that made sense. It's 9 years. And you talk about that mirror of who I was held up to me when I ran into my old friends.
Mm-hmm.
They're still living the same way. They're falling apart from their lifestyle. They're completely hood. And I'm like educated now. I did MBA. I did this. I did that. And it was just blew my mind. It was just unbelievable. In fact, the immigration department, the Homeland Security, when I went through, they had to do their thing with me, and they went through my bags and everything. And, they found I became a Freemason. They were like, who were you? And who are you now? Like it just blew their mind. And it really solidified the change once I went home. Like in my mind, I was able to polarize where I came from and where I was today. Right.
Yes. And it's cool to see that you're taking all these things that you've learned and now you're helping other people with them. And
yeah,
I always talk to everyone who's listening in my audience to take these skills and natural abilities, but not even what you're good at, but take your story, your unique story, and use that to fuel you and who you serve and how you serve them. Like we all have this unique story that we can use to make a difference in the world. And a question I have for you, just a question I have for you. How long have you been sober now?
Over 10 years.
Over 10 years.
Yeah.
What would you recommend to somebody who right now struggles with alcohol and wants to make a change?
Well, I got sober through 12 steps, right? So I needed a support group, right? Like I'm the addict and the alcoholic of the variety that just stopping wasn't on the cards for me. I needed support, right? So for anyone that thinks they it's for anyone that thinks they have a problem, but they think they're not an alcoholic, what I would suggest is try to control your drinking. Go out and see if you can tell yourself you're going to have 3 drinks and see if you can stick to 3. Do it over 2-3 weeks, a month. And if you can't consistently stick to the plan that you had before you left, you might have a problem with alcohol. And if you do, you need to get help, because you are not going to unleash your true capability and who you really can be with addictions. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's impossible.
Wise words. You've talked a lot about support and support systems that you've leaned on, like 12 steps and the mentor that you found who was in business in Australia. And it's a common theme among everyone that I talk to. And I don't even mention mentors. I don't mention like who helped you. I don't mention any of that. But like with Donna Campbell, who I spoke with recently, she went to an ashram and met the monks there. With Julie, who I spoke with about mindfulness, she mentioned mentors. Everyone's mentioning someone in their life. I had mentors who helped me with my health, and that really was the catalyst of change for every other area for me. So what is it about mentors? Do we need to find somebody to help us along? Like what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So I was on a podcast last night and I reflected that even at my worst, growing up in California, I had always attracted to older men that would like I seemed to have. I had a father. I grew up with a father, but he worked all the time, and he was emotionally unavailable. And I had, throughout my journey on the streets, there was always older. When I was 17, I was hanging out with dudes in their 40s. There was always figures there. They were just taking me to the dark. You know, they were the Darth Vader crew, right? And, you know, I come to Australia and I meet the Yoda crew, you know, but it was the same instinct to be taught and led. And I think we all need that. We all need people. And this is the thing about this dude. It wasn't that he told me what to do. I watched how he lived his life. And I knew that I was like him. And I connected with him. And because he was doing X, Y, Z, he was providing a signposts of where to go, what to do. He was modeling behavior. He wasn't telling me do X, Y, Z. He was showing me what successful behavior looked like. And today, I would say my mentors are people I don't know most of the time. I've got a couple teachers in the spiritual realm, but in the main, the men that I now look up to aren't necessarily ones that I know. It may be people that I interview on my podcast, and you know how that goes. Like, you don't need to know people for them to serve as a mentor. What they're doing is, you know, they're providing a signpost of okay, this is potentially a direction you can go in. I think, yeah. So that's my thoughts on that, man.
I love that. And when it comes to, like, you went to Australia, you didn't know this individual before. So what attracted you to this individual specifically, and how did you work your way into their inner circle? Because I remember there used to be a lot of people who would, like, I was the new hire trainer for many years. And these new salespeople would look up to me, and I'd be an inspiration because I was successful in sales, and now I'd be training them to do the same thing. But I didn't always want to have these people following me around, asking me, like, I didn't always want that. So how did you get the acceptance from him?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So first of all, I had bounced around a couple multinationals, right? So I got into logistics, and I'm in logistics still. And the only reason is because the first job I got was DHL, which everyone knows. And I went to another multinational. I couldn't cut it in a multinational because how, you know, they were alcohol testing. It was what it was. And I heard of this small company that seemed to be really successful. I called them. I went to the interview. I had stitches in my head, and they still gave me a job. It was crazy, right? They're like, we want to hire someone that's going to create chaos. I said, I'm your man. Anyways, I worked there for a couple months, and I was working really hard, but getting burned out. And part of it was I didn't really know what I was doing. I was a very good cold caller, but I didn't know how to manage a sales process. I can get in anywhere. Mm-hmm. And the second thing was my lifestyle was burning me out, drinking, you know, coming to work in the same suit for 3 days. It was just a combination of that was happening. So this dude at the time was a CFO. He was an accountant. And he wanted to get into the commercial side. And so he was coming in as the GM. He's also an owner, one of the shareholders. We had met and we had clicked, and that he had lived in San Francisco before, and he loved San Francisco. I was from that area, so we had that connection. One night on a Sunday, so he's about to take over the GM role. I get drunk. It must have been a cry for help. I must have known what type of guy he was. I texted him on a 5 a.m. on a Sunday morning and resigned.
Wow.
And then the next day he calls me and goes, what's that? And I was like, oh, look, I was drunk, blah, blah. He goes, let me give you your first piece of advice. Don't make major life decisions when you're drunk and it's 5 a.m. on a Sunday. He said, come and meet me tomorrow. So I went and met him in a coffee shop, didn't have any gas to get there, no money in the bank. And I told him everything. And he had said to me that he had heard all kinds of things about me. I was a loose cannon. I needed tempering. There was a lot of potential. He was seeing results. And he said that one of the people that he was most excited about working with was myself. And he said to me, he goes, look, don't resign. He goes, if you can sort out your drinking and lifestyle issues, I'll teach you what you need to know to be successful. But you've got something. There's something there. And that's all I needed. For somebody to tell me, I see something in you that you don't see in yourself. I was 28. I knew there wasn't a lot of chance left. I honestly knew alcohol was going to kill me. Suicide, car accident, something was going to happen. My drinking was getting really dark. And I think the fact that, I mean, this is also a man that in our industry, in my firm, that company I work for is now my biggest competitor, right? And he's not there anymore. But in my firm, 4 or 5 people have come through the graduate program he had set up at the other company. My CEO, we were both mentored by him. So the guy loved to teach. But I think he saw something in me. I was a bit arrogant. I didn't want to ride his coattails. He knew that too. I wasn't trying to ride his coattails. I was legitimately someone with potential that he saw if he could harness and unleash what I had, we would grow. And we grew that business by over 100% in 1 year. Wow. In terms of revenue. It was phenomenal. Extraordinary.
What a fascinating story. We brought you on to talk about habits, and we're diving into a story that goes so much deeper than that. For someone listening who says, I've got all these major life changes that I want to make. I know something's got to give. I know something needs to change. I want to find that CFO who could take me under their wing and mentor me. Do you believe it's possible or feasible for someone to go out and look for this mentor role in their life? Or do you believe that you only found this individual because you were ready?
I was ready and receptive. Had he offered the opportunity and I just got drunk a week later and kept getting drunk, the opportunity would have just, it wouldn't have gone anywhere. And I had that before numerous times growing up in the US as an elite soccer player. Like there were lots of people that wanted to give me opportunity. I was at the right place at the right time when I met a man who had the goods to give. Right now, why did I leave Brisbane to move to Melbourne when I shouldn't have? And how did I find this company? Was that preordained in the skies? I don't know. Right. But they do say when the student is ready, the teacher will show up. Right. I mean, there's a bit of that. Right. But we need to be open and ready. Yeah. Now, I do believe that I've had conversations with a gentleman, Ian Pollard. He's a chairman of Billabong. He comes from wealth. He's a PhD, Rhodes Scholar, elite tennis player. This is profound. He said to me, he doesn't believe he's mentally tough, or he doesn't believe he has the ability to run through a brick wall. And I was like blown away. I was like, Ian, what do you mean? You've done this. He goes, that wasn't a function of trying hard. That was a function of the capability I was exposed to growing up. His dad was a PhD. His uncle was a professional tennis player. The bar was already there. He was already being indoctrinated into another level, right? So there's something to be said around the people and the influences that we have around us and how critical they are in molding who we actually become, right?
Yeah. I mean, they say you are the average of the 3 people you spend the most time around.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, when you're coaching an executive or when you're really just having a conversation with anybody, helping them to improve their life, let's say you and we only had one call together forever, right? And you had to help me in some way. I was receptive and willing, and you had to help me change in whatever way that I wanted to change, right? Just to be a better human being, more productive, whatever it might be. What would you really dig into in this one meeting, this one sit down with an individual to help them make those changes? What's the one thing you'd help them with?
Yeah, I think anyone that is performance orientated or growth orientated, they need to have at the forefront, at the apex of their value system, the evolution of mind, body, spirit as the number one priority. That has to be the true north. And when that becomes, or when that starts to become a focal point, everything from there, all your activities, everything you do, your behaviors, your attitudes, your learnings, your habits will start to align with that. So it's about, if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, individuals need to start to aim for self-actualization, right? Like that's the key. And then from there, once that starts to become the guiding force and in that true north, that's when you can start to really shift. Now, some people may not be able to project themselves to that view. It may be far too far away from where they're at. And I have a tendency to forget that now, right? So it's about the basics, the basic behaviors and the basic actions that we can take in the moment that start to redefine how we view ourselves. Our narratives are very important. And once we start to lose that weight, go to the gym, get that muscle, we start to feel the change. We start to see the change. We start to get feedback from our environment of how we're changing. That will continue to propel us in the right direction, right? But I think if I were to give someone advice, it'd really be to, what's your mission? And how does that mission actually align with growth across all verticals in your life, mind, body, spirit? And I think if that's your guiding principle and guiding light, everything you do will have impact in the right way.
It sounds like taking care of you, your mind, body, spirit really just helps you to get the results that you want in those other areas of life from what you're saying.
Man, I have these conversations with colleagues all the time. And it took me a long time to learn to trust this, that sometimes when I'm in a situation where a sale's about to get lost or something has happened that is really stressed me out, my tendency is to go deeper into it, try to figure it out. But going for a 2-hour run in the bush, which used to cause me panic because it's like I'm being I'm being not productive. I'm taking myself out. These are the things that actually will help me solve those problems and be more productive. So sometimes by actually focusing less on the material and focusing more on your inner mechanisms, the material is better. If that makes sense. The material, the yield on that material is much more impactful.
It does make sense. And I heard someone give the quote one time that a lot of people say they don't have time for the gym, but this one individual says it's funny that a lot of people say that because the gym and working on myself is what gives me more time. It helps me live longer. It helps me be more productive, more effective.
Man, 110%. And because it's ultimately, what are you doing it for?
Yeah.
Right. Like that's why I'm at home every night for dinner. Right. There's certain key things I've got to do because why am I grinding? And people may not like the way I move and groove. They feel like I'm too inflexible about our harmonious way of life because I'm not willing to do the 14 hours in the office. I'm not doing that shit anymore. That was 1980s, man. You know what I mean? I wasn't working then, but you know what I'm saying? So it's and to then hold your belief system in confidence When you get pressure from external environments, well, that's key, that's critical too.
Absolutely. I've heard you talk a lot in the past about formal education and the impact that it's had on your life. And it was very interesting to hear you say that, because a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs, there's like this whole movement out there of, oh, you don't need college, you don't need higher education. And I'll tell you right up front, I didn't go to college. I started to earn very great money in sales. And I decided to instead put more money and put more time into that so I can continue to earn. And it has led me to where I am. So I graduated high school, no college education. But a lot of people who are listening might be like, should I go back to college? Should I have a degree? Is it going to help me? I know it's played a role in your life, but what are your thoughts when it comes to formal education and how it relates to somebody's quote unquote success?
Very, very good question. It's nuanced, right? Like, we've got the generation, or not saying it's the generation, we've got the message into the generation of today about hacks. Like, hacks are a good thing. Hack to become a million followers on Instagram. Like, there's this hack culture. I actually believe the longer way is the way in many, many times. I'm not saying to be inefficient, but we need to be skillful in understanding the value we're going to get from the harder, longer path. Now, for me, I had street smarts for days, but what I couldn't do was, my mentor, Matthew, I would sit, and I'm in a B2B complex selling environment, selling to CEOs, CFOs, right? Understanding how different components of businesses come together, P&Ls and operations and sales and all these kind of things come together. I watch my mentor, he's having a meeting, we're having a meeting, and my mentor is counseling this prospective client on unrelated business issues. He's talking to him as a peer, a trusted advisor. And what happens is the customer's like, yeah, I want you around, because people are looking for confidence. It's not really even what you're saying. There's an energy of confidence. Like, yeah, this is the person I want around the table when I need to make decisions. And I realized it was Matthew's acumen. Now, I wanted that. I thought, I'm 29, 30. I'm like still single-ish. I got time to grind. And I'm like, I'm going to go do an executive MBA at the toughest program in Australia. That thing was a crucible. That was like getting sober. It was another crucible. Transformational, completely ripped me apart and put me back together. But what it did was it gave my game, that street game, it gave me language, it gave me credibility, it gave me an understanding of how these C-suite decision makers are thinking. That was relevant for my context. It may not be relevant for other people. Sitting in a corporate finance class, I learned about equity. I learned about shares. I then went to the market, negotiated sweat equity with a company, giving them my sales skills. Okay, you give me ownership. I learned all this stuff doing my MBA. Right. Yeah. So for me, it worked out. And everyone needs to determine if it's for them, but don't make the decision based on a cop-out that school's for fools, or the messaging that we have today that there's a shorter way. A shorter way to what? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think it's very important what you said too. A lot of people just go into school. A lot of people that I'm 27. So I've got people who I know are still in school, and they did it because they thought that was what they had to do. They thought that was the only option. They saw everybody else doing it. The difference with you is you did it because you saw your mentor speak with this acumen and this certainty and confidence. And you said, I want to get some of that. And you linked that to formal education. And yeah, it gave you information and knowledge. But again, I know a lot of people with information and knowledge you can't get their way out of a paper bag who don't have that certainty. You have to use that. And you went into it with the intentionality Like we keep talking about intention. You didn't just go into it. You went into it with the intention of leaving with this feeling of certainty. And just from listening to you, seeing how you move, seeing how you speak about it, it's very clear that you got out of it exactly what you were looking to get out of it.
Yeah, look, I think I was clocking up 20, 21 hours a week on top of being a senior sales guy, right? And it was hard. What was taking people 1 hour to study would take my ass 3 hours because I got like no attention span, right? Salesperson. Like I'm watching, I get up, walk around, and like, but I think I got more out of it because of that. And I was ready. And I know, especially in the US, there's a tendency for people to do their MBA straight out of undergrad. I wouldn't recommend that. Unless you're a brainiac and you're going straight to Harvard Business School or you're going to a top Ivy League school, I don't understand why you do that. Like for me, I would get my undergrad if I wanted to even get my undergrad. If not, go straight to work. But I actually have my views with undergrad degrees. I think they are good potentially because it helps you think and understand stuff, but there's not a lot of depth in undergrad business degrees in my view. Mm-hmm. And I think to a certain degree, a lot of people are better off going into that workforce and then engaging education when they're a bit older and they'll appreciate it better.
Well said.
You already did 12 years. You're pissed off. You want to make some money, right? Like,
yeah. Yeah. So get your undergrad in this worldview you're mentioning, get your undergrad and then go into reality and use it and learn what you still need and then go into a grad program with the intentionality of getting what it is that you want out of it.
Yeah. And even not even doing your undergrad, maybe if you feel like you don't, for a person that goes into sales, we all fall into sales, right? Like we can talk and we didn't really want to do anything in school. And so if you're sales inclined, maybe go into a sales job where you'll probably learn more than you would in that undergrad degree. And then if you get to that place where you decide you want to skill up, go get an MBA or not, like you, right? But I think it's what you want to do. If you want to specialize out of high school, a lawyer, doctor, blah, 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 it's different. Right. So I think it's all very nuanced, but I'd say the one thing is don't make a decision not to or to do school because of the messaging around you. It's got to be relevant for you.
Got it. Absolutely love it. So I want to ask you, before I ask you what you're working on and where we can connect and find you, I do want to go back to ultra habits again, because the winning the day has led us to everything else that we talked about. And you mentioned that first. So I assume that's like one of the number one in hierarchy to the others. I know on your website, you have the 10 habits download that people can get when they put their email in there. And I'd recommend that they all do that. Your website is actually in the description. So guys, click RJ's website, go check that out. You can get on his list by getting the 10 habits book. But what three, other than winning the day, let me ask you this instead, other than winning the day, what are two other ultra habits that have completely helped to shape your life the way it is today?
I'd say you learn every day. Learn something every day. I read a Harvard Business Review article or I read something about ultra. Do something learn something, engage in learning that is not orientated to your job where you're on autopilot. You have to stretch your thought process, that critical thinking piece. I think that's one. And the other one would be, we talked about exercise. We talked about the physicality. I want to focus on something else. Track your finances.
Track your finances.
Track your finances daily, weekly. Where are you spending your money? Where you're spending your money will tell you who you are.
Wow.
And it is not always a pretty view, man. You'll see those. You'll see that daily Snicker bar you're buying, and I eat chocolate a lot, but I burn it off, right? Like people say you eat chocolate every day. Well, I burn 5,000 calories every day. You know what I mean? It's relative, right? But track your finances, like full on. And you know what? It's sometimes we don't want to do it even. I'm like, But there's on your app, on your bank app, you can easily track your finances. It'll tell you what you're about.
I talk about that all the time, brother, because I was over $20,000 in credit card debt, buying tons of stuff that I didn't need. Oh, I was making great money, but I was spending all of it. And when I started to track my finances and eliminate my debt, it changed practically every single area of my life. It was the second thing that changed everything. The first thing was my fitness, and that led me to my finances. So it's so powerful. I'm really happy you mentioned that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So what are you working on right now, RJ? Like what are you promoting? What are you talking about? What's next for you?
Right now I'm focused on the podcast and the show. So the Ultra Habits show, which all the episodes can be found at www.ultrahabits.co. Really just building the show out. I'm doing some one-on-one stuff in the executive space. But the intention right now isn't to dive too much into that, as I'm focusing more on the logistics business that we have and we're building that business. But right now it's about going, checking out the show, leaving us some reviews, the good, bad, and the ugly. Let us know what you think about it. Really, it's geared towards what we call the corporate athlete. You know, it's that individual that's at that intersection of high performance within their sector. And we talk about three different types of people usually. One, it's that, the older kind of statesman that's been there, done that, likes to, be philosophical about performance and listen to other people talk about it. The second individual is usually the CEO or C-suite or executive that's already deep in the trenches, that wants access to information, great dialogue, tips around habits and how they can be successful in what they're doing. And then our favorite is the up and coming executive, the individual that's in their 20s, late 20s, early 30s, and they're looking around and they want to separate themselves from the pack and they want access to the right information that's going to enable them to do so. So we're really focused on that demographic.
That's great. I saw your podcast. I listened to a couple episodes. I love the people you're having on and the topics that you talk about. And I think a lot of the topics you're talking about on that show, a lot of people aren't talking about, which is why I found it interesting. And guys, I posted a link to RJ's site. You can click in the description. At the top, you can click podcast. It'll bring you to all the episodes that are listed right on that page, or go to ultrahabits.co. Is there anywhere else that we can connect or follow you, RJ? Or
LinkedIn. So it's RJ Singh at LinkedIn. That's primarily what I use. I think they've got me on Instagram now, but I don't really go on Instagram, but I am there. But primarily LinkedIn, and I am on Instagram and RJ Singh Ultra Habits.
That's great. RJ, it was an absolute pleasure talking to you about habits and everything else that we dived into today. Just incredible conversation. Thank you so much for your time, brother. And I look forward to talking with you and having you on the show again in the future.
Take care, Brandon. Thank you so much, man.
Absolutely unbelievable show. What a deep conversation. We brought RJ in to talk about habits, and instead we talked about winning your day. We did talk about habits, but that led us to his powerful story of how he's become sober and the mentors that he's found and who he was then and who he is now. And he's just a well-lived individual who's gone through a lot in his ripe age and I believe he's in his late 30s, and just very useful techniques and stories that you can apply to your own life to adopt your own ultra habits so that you can achieve self-mastery. You heard RJ, if you're a salesperson, if you're in the corporate world, the number one way that you can win is to treat yourself like an athlete. Take care of yourself, your mind, body, your spirit, and that will translate to every other area of life. It was incredible having RJ on. Be sure to go to his website in the description to check him out. Check out his podcast. Give it a listen. The number one way that you can support this Be Better broadcast, which comes at you every Monday and Thursday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, is to share this with somebody who could use it. If you found value from this enlightening conversation, hit that share button. Give the link to one person who needs to hear this. That's the number one way you can help us to grow. Thank you for tuning in. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.